Good morning and welcome. I'm very glad that you're here, and I'm happy to be here myself. Deb and I have been away the last couple weeks. You may have known that, or you may not have, but we had a great time, and as Taylor just sang, "Open Up My Eyes with Wonder." That's what happened to Deb and I. We got to spend several days with her brother out in the high desert of north of Las Vegas, out in Nevada. It was an amazing time, enjoying some of the cool things that weren't so cool in the desert, just amazing. And then from there we went up to see our son Caleb in San Francisco, who lives very close to the ocean. And so we walked the ocean and the shoreline and the great highway along the ocean. It was just a wonderful time, and got to chase two little granddaughters around for a week too. So it was a good time all the way around. Thank you for the opportunity to go, and we're really happy to be back. We're continuing our study of Philippians. We have two more sections to go on it. Thank you to Jordan for speaking in my place and for filling you with good stuff from God's Word. Today we're in chapter 4 of Philippians, verse 1 through 9. If you have your Bible, I'd encourage you to open it up and follow along with me. Suppose our church received a letter from a respected leader that we all knew very well. And suppose this letter was sent to us, was instructed to be read in church on Sunday morning publicly. Suppose the letter was very specific about the things that we are facing as a church family right now. And suppose, awkwardly, suppose that your name was mentioned in the letter. Suppose you were called out in that letter, in a public letter. Suppose some of you were commended and some of you were corrected. The letter to the Philippians gives us a few hints about the issues that they faced. And yeah, every church has issues, right? Every one of them does. And the COVID virus has magnified those issues in all of our churches. The church in Philippi dealt with persecution, and they had a lack of unity at some point. There was a fair amount of complaining. There were false teachers, and there was a personality conflict. And some believe that Paul spent the first 3 chapters of his letter. We have them divided into chapters, of course, but he didn't. He just wrote a letter. But some believe that Paul spent the first 3 chapters of his letter leading up to the main issue, which was this dispute between 2 well-known, prominent women in the church. So he moves from that topic to another topic to another topic, like a teacher giving a grade card on their ability to stand firm in the Lord. So if you just keep the context together there as you're reading along with me, the first area that he gives a grade card on is the subject of your relationships. He says, "I plead with you to agree with each other in the Lord." One of the reasons I love the Bible is because it doesn't hide anything. It just puts it out there. It just tells it like it is. If you were writing the Bible to prove how great Christianity is, you wouldn't probably include the denials of Peter and the blunders of Moses and Paul and all those things. And you probably wouldn't put in there this story about, I'm going to call her Euodia and Syntyche. I don't know if that's how you say it or not, but that's how I'm saying it today. We don't know why these girls were in conflict. It happens. We know it happens. If you're part of any organization, sooner or later, someone is going to say something that's going to offend someone else, right? It's just a matter of time. My advice is this: if you are easily offended, do not become a referee in basketball. Don't do that. I've been there, done that. If that bothers you, don't choose that for employment. Mainly because we're flawed people and we're proud people, and that is a recipe for conflict with us. Everybody in the church knew about this dissension between these 2 prominent girls, but no one had intervened so far. And you know how it goes with things like that. it turns ugly pretty quick. Some people supported Euodia, and some people backed up Syntyche. And so we have now these two parties, and it's a threat to the church because it results in gossip, and then neglect, and eventually it leads to bitterness, right? And then eventually one of the groups goes down the road to start another church, taking their flaws and their complaints and their bitterness with them to start over. That's not good. Paul didn't want that to happen. So he remembers these girls. He commends them. They were his co-workers. Their names were written in the book of life. They were partners. This was a good group of people in a unified church at one point. But what a tragedy. Satan can take one little thing and cause division between the family of God. Be careful. It happened one time at a Lutheran church in New Sweden, Maine, back on Sunday, April 27, 2003. On that day, 46 members attended worship there in Maine. And by Monday, 12 members of the church were in the emergency room with some mysterious sickness. One man who was already in poor health, 78 years old, had died overnight. And authorities were puzzled. What happened there at that place? They had to have something in common, and so they traced it to the coffee pot. Yep. Everyone remembered that it tasted bitter on that Sunday morning, but to a guy like me, hey, all coffee tastes that way, so how would I ever know it tasted bitter? But maybe for some of you, you could pick it out. It turns out that a 53-year-old man was upset with the church because his family had donated a communion table to the church, and it wasn't being used. So he decided to get revenge by putting arsenic in the coffee. Yeah, it's a story. It's an amazing story. Don't go getting any ideas, okay? That might be why somebody in the church decided it would be really smart to unplug the coffee machine out there. I don't know who did that, but they unplugged it, maybe knowing about this story. But crazy things happen when we let our pride get out of control. So the remedy, Paul says, I plead with you, agree with each other in the Lord. Put the Lord first. Deny yourself. Have the mind of Christ, who, remember chapter 2, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing. So it isn't time to leave when you have conflict. It's time to follow the one another's of the Scripture, right? To prefer one another, to encourage one another, to accept one another, to forgive one another, and 13 more go along those lines. If there is dissension between you and somebody in the community today, I plead with you. Agree with each other in the Lord. Make the first move. Humble yourself and go make it right. Don't let it boil over. So that's the area of relationships. But the teacher moves on to the area of attitude next. He says, rejoice in the Lord always, and I will say it again, rejoice. It's amazing to me when I read through the letter again, a letter written from prison under house arrest, that the word joy or rejoice is in these 4 chapters 18 times. How can he have that kind of attitude under those circumstances? Well, joy goes past circumstances. This is deep down confidence that God's in control no matter what is happening on the outside. So your view of God determines how you see life. And that's why it's vital that you spend time in God's Word. If you have this sour attitude, it can be directly related to your view of God and how little you know of Him. Remember that simple formula for the quiet time with the Lord? 145 ULB. You did some of that already this morning. Psalm 145 is where I start when I get sour like that. Great is the Lord, and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom. Moving on, he's gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and abounding in love. The Lord is faithful to all his promises and loving toward all he has made. You spend some time in Psalm 103 or Psalm 145 and you get a view of God that changes your perspective. And then you move on from there to the UL part of that, which we sang this morning. You sang the UL this morning, unfailing love. Focus on some texts that talk about his unfailing love and how valuable you are in the eyes of God. And then lastly, the B is for blessing. Send out that blessing on other people. Paul's view of God gave him this deep confidence even though he was under house arrest. God's got this. It's his kingdom. It's going to go forward whether I'm around or not. It's his. So if you have a small God, you got a big problem. If you have a big God, you got a small problem. But without Scripture, you're bound to have a small view of God. So I encourage you to spend time in God's Word. Okay, so rejoicing doesn't mean that you always have a joke on hand or that you're always bubbly in personality. No, it's this deep confidence that those who are with us are more than those who are against us. God's got this. So what kind of grade would you give yourself in the area of attitude this morning? What would the teacher say about that? And then here's the third area, conduct. You know, when the teachers, kids today, I don't know if they have a conduct part of the grade card or not, but remember back in the day we had a conduct thing, and my parents were pretty serious about that when you could kind of be average in a bunch of things, but you better not be average in conduct. You better be up there. You should get an A in conduct. Sometimes that didn't happen in our family. You know, there were detentions after school on several occasions. Conduct. Paul says, let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. That's your conduct. Gentleness should be the feature of your conduct, right? The great boxer Muhammad Ali said in a pre-fight press conference, "I'm so mean I make medicine sick." I love that line, man. I mean, he's psyching out people. He's going to rip your head off when he boxes you. There's a lot of meanness going around right now. I know it. And if just the signs that are posted and the things that are said. But if you follow the ways of Christ, you're going to be swimming against that current, right? But let your gentleness be evident to all. How you doing with that? How's that going for you? John MacArthur spent several pages in his commentary trying to come up with the right word and explanation. And he after all his time spent, he said he thinks the best synonym for gentleness is graciousness. That's a good word too, isn't it? It insists on making other people feel valuable. And of course, Jesus shows the way. He slows down, he pays attention, he listens, and he talks. His gentleness was evident to all. Just a case in point, remember that party at the home of a guy named Simon the Pharisee? A woman interrupted things by washing Jesus' feet. And Simon thought to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of woman she is. He would know that stuff. And Jesus read his mind and said, in so many words, I know what kind of woman she is. She's exactly the reason why I came here in the first place. I know that. That's why I came. Now, it says, let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. If you grow up in a large family, you know how it goes. There is conflict, daily hourly conflict sometimes. There are sucker punches, if you have brothers, and mocking and insults, and practical jokes and tattletaling. I'll bet my mother used the same strategy as your mother if you grew up in a big family. If you guys don't stop, I'm going to tell your dad when he gets home from work. The Lord is near. When you know the Lord is near, that changes everything, right? I'm probably going to stop punching and mocking and insulting and practical joking and all that stuff. I'm probably going to stop that because the Lord is near. That's a scary term. Get that down. Jesus' presence is a great big motivator in our lives. And so that also reflects on your living in the presence of Christ. Let your gentleness be evident to all. Here's another area that you need a grade card report on. Your anxiety. Oh man. Is the Bible timely or what? Don't be anxious about anything, but in prayer, the peace of God will guard your heart and your mind. Jimmy, thank you for your prayer this morning. Right on target with what I'm going to say here. Verses 6 and 7, even before COVID, we lived in an anxious world. A lot of stress. There's 1 million medical reasons that cause death, right? 1 million of them. Then after the medical reasons, there's like dangerous animals, and there's parasites, and there's electricity, and there's childbirth, and there's toasters, and there's guns, and there's lightning, and there's raw oysters, and there's trying to drive a stick shift in high heels. I've never done that, but I hear that's dangerous. There's wearing a Patriots jersey in Buffalo. There's coffee. Remember the coffee pot? And there's your siblings. There's 1 million ways to die, right? Reader's Digest researched warning labels about the dangerous world we lived in, and they wanted to give you a warning just in case so you could be aware of all the dangerous things that are out there. And this will make you feel like a genius probably, but let's review those, Renee, if you would. The first one is the wheelbarrow, and just so you'll know. Okay. And then the second one is the baby stroller. New parents, that's a heads up to you. Pay attention. The next one is the fish hook. Somebody should tell the fish that one, right? I guess. The next one is the iron. Don't do that. Be aware. And then the next one is the drill. Bet your brother tried that on you, maybe, right? Yeah, that one too. And then this last one goes without comment. I'll just let you read that on your own. Happy Sunday morning, everybody. Listen, I don't know about you guys. I've noticed, I was talking with Dell, I just noticed all the stuff on our vacation and in and out of airports and different things like that, and the way people are reacting. I came to this thought that Satan sells fear, and he has a lot of customers. And you guys, it can't be that way with the children of God, because God's our dad. He's got this. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. That's the remedy for anxiety. I know that there's therapists and psychiatrists and pills and all those things. I know that. But the Bible remedy for anxiety is prayer. And our anxiety, I believe, is an insult to God. In prayer, the issue leaves your hands. It just leaves your hands, and enters into the hands of the Lord, and you just leave it there and walk away. Prayer activates the mighty forces of heaven, and the situation may not be resolved to your satisfaction, but the promise of Scripture is right there, isn't it? The peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. I have been watching you. I've been watching you deal with some of the most horrendous situations that life can bring. And I have watched you all demonstrate a poise and a confidence to trust God. This resolve to trust God, because you're, beyond my ability to describe, you're guarded by the peace of Christ. I was leading a mission trip years ago to southern Peru. It was an overnight flight leaving at 11 p.m. from Miami, Florida, flying about 7 hours down to Lima, Peru. We were, a few hours into the flight when the pilot interrupted with an announcement in Spanish. Most of the people were asleep. I was awake, and I could tell from my limited Spanish it was a troubling announcement. It was confirmed when I saw my fellow passengers react with great emotion. He said the plane was being diverted to Panama City, Panama, because there may be a bomb planted on the plane. Yeah, that'll wake you up from a deep sleep. What? No. You can imagine the reaction on the plane. What can you do, right? What can you do? I can't explain it to you very well even now, but throughout that agonizing time, the century of God's peace surrounded me. I had about 15, 18 students with me and another female leader on our team as well, and they're all looking to me like, do something. Okay. Guys, go back to sleep. It'll be fine. No, you can't say that. I just had this quiet resolve. Hey, God's in this. For me to live as Christ and to die is gain, right? The plane landed in Panama City. We parked very far from the terminal. And believe me, the term terminal took on a new meaning that night to me. We walked a long way into the airport. They gave us a secluded place all by ourselves. And after several hours inspection, we trudged back out and got on the same plane and continued our flight. What a rich promise you have. Through prayer, you can trade your anxiety for God's peace. How do you grade yourself today on the subject of anxiety in your life today? How are you doing? And then here's the fifth area. What about the things that go through your mind, your thought life? Verse 8 says, think about these kinds of things. And I want you to notice, sprinkled throughout this paragraph, sandwiched in between right praying and right thinking, is the peace of God. Verse 8 should probably be attached to your phone somehow and to your laptop and your TV somehow. The media you consume has got to be filtered by this criteria. Now, it's right here. I threw it all together on one page. It just comes at you fast. But these are the criteria. Is it true? Is it noble? Is it right? Is it pure? Is it lovely? Is it admirable? Is it excellent? Is it worthy of praise? Does that describe the stuff that enters into your head? Because what consumes you comes out of you. It affects your thought life. The term is garbage in and garbage out, right? If you bring it in, it's going to linger and cause issues. But if you have the indwelling Holy Spirit to teach and guide you, He can help you filter out the garbage. That's why it's so vital to have that keeping in step with the Spirit thing. Suppose this morning I had up here a dozen fresh jelly donuts. Fresh and plump. Just bought them this morning. Here's my offer to you right now. You can have them all. You can have them all as long as you eat all of them in the next hour. Okay, that's the deal. You can have them all. They just have to be consumed by you alone in the next hour. What do you say? Severe consequences may follow your decision, but you get to decide. What are you going to do? See, the more you keep in step with the Spirit, the more you'll be able to avoid things that look very attractive to you but turn out to be detrimental to you. Parents, I encourage you to fill your home with good stuff, just good stuff. I came across this poem from the Book of Virtues. There's a big, thick book of Virtues we used to hang around our house. And this is just one of the little poems that was in there, just delightful. It says, there's too many kids in this tub. There's too many elbows to scrub. I just washed the behind that I'm sure wasn't mine. There's too many kids in this tub. It's just, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? That's just, sure, I don't know if it's noble, but it's delightful. You know, it's just good stuff. What grade would you give yourself regarding the media that you consume? I was happy. I went to the library before Deb and I left for our trip, and I just checked out 2 books that had nothing to do with nothing. Just books that were of interest to me. One was an author that I had read before, and I just wanted to bring his stuff because he's hilarious, and I just needed that in my life. And one was a historic thing that I wanted to know more about. And I just had nothing to do with the current crisis in the world and just stuff that I was interested in. It was such a good read. It was just good stuff for me. And it built my life even more. And I loved it. And I would encourage you just to check your library, your video library, your phone. Man, maybe it's time to eliminate some stuff and fill it with this criteria. Here's the last one. It's your habits. What kind of grade would you give on your card for your habits? Paul said in verse 9, an amazing statement. It's something I wish I could say to you and that you could say to each other. Whatever you have learned or received or heard in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. What a statement that is. Earlier in Corinthians, he says, follow me as I follow Christ. Man, I want to be able to say that. Just do what I do. Say what I say. Just follow me. You need good examples in your life, people who will guide you and demonstrate faith. And that's really one of the hard things about this shutdown period that we're in. We have lost contact with mentors and encouragers in our life. And I hope that you'll keep reaching out to each other. Paul was that to the people of Philippi. He was a mentor, an encourager. And I'm so grateful for people in my life who I grew up watching and learning from. And Mr. Walker was one of those. I remember he said one time, faith is not so much interpreted, but it's imitated. You see someone else doing it, and you try to follow their pattern, their example. Notice again, the peace of God is in there. It says, right thinking and right actions are connected to the peace of God and the God of peace. It's all wrapped up right there. So how does your grade card look this morning? Just check it off again. Relationships, agree with each other in the Lord. Attitude, rejoice in the Lord always. Conduct, let your gentleness be evident to all. Anxiety, present your request to the Lord. Thought life, think about these things, pure and noble and true and right. And habits, put the word into practice. What a paragraph of Scripture. These are stressful times. You need the peace of God that comes from knowing the God of peace. I'd like to pray with you about these things. I'd like to invite the worship team back up to take their place too. But would you pray with me before we continue on with communion? Father in heaven, thank you for the living Word of God that is transformative. Thank you that it's as fresh and new as the daily newspaper. Thank you that you preserved it through all this time for our benefit. Thank you for the Holy Spirit that makes it come alive so that it is applicable to the place and time where we live, just as it was in the New Testament days, and will be 1,000 years from now if you wait. Lord, help us to put into practice the things that we have learned. And for those today who are dealing with anxious moments, great stress, would you help them to learn to pray more, and would you give them your peace? This is my prayer in Jesus' name.